Welcome to Eye on America. I'm Michelle Miller. Today we examine issues of public safety and justice. In Arizona, we see how one county is becoming a deadly speedway for drug and human traffickers. And in California, we speak with officials who are working hard to curtail the homelessness epidemic. But we begin with a decades-long fight to release a wrongfully convicted man in Missouri. In 1990, faulty testimony in a murder investigation led to the conviction and life sentence of Christopher Dunn. He has spent more than 30 years behind bars. 48 Hours correspondent Erin Moriarty looks into how a state law is keeping Dunn locked up, despite having long proved his innocence.
I'm Christopher Dunn, an innocent man who's been in prison for a crime in which I did commit, who's afraid that I may die in prison.
51-year-old Christopher Dunn says he's running out of time. He's had 3 heart attacks since he was incarcerated more than 33 years ago.
I'm still trying to figure out what is justice in Missouri.
A shot in the dark just after midnight on May 19, 1990, killed 15-year-old Rico Rogers and put 18-year-old Christopher Dunn behind bars. Dunn says he was home with his mother and sister at the time.
I couldn't tell you who Rico Rogers was to save my life.
Had you ever met him? Did you know?
Never met him.
But 2 other teens with Rogers, Michael Davis, then 12 years old, and 14-year-old DeMaurice Stepp, told police the shooter was Dunn. Did Rico tell people he had fought with you?
I heard the witness say this, but the thing is, I wasn't the person that he had to fight with.
While there was no evidence to support the teen's claim, Dunn's public defender urged him to take a deal.
She wanted me to plead guilty for 10 years.
Why didn't you take the deal?
I didn't do the crime. I didn't do it, so why am I gonna sit there and say that?
Dunn's trial in the summer of 1991 was over in a single afternoon. The prosecution presented no motive, no weapon, no physical evidence, just the 2 teenage witnesses.
They never had nothing. Only thing that linked me to this crime was the testimony of these 2 little guys.
And when it was the defense's turn,
my lawyer never called no witnesses, not even my family, to testify for me. I went to trial without a defense, without technically a lawyer.
The jury was back in less than 45 minutes. Guilty.
It was like my world just fell in front of me. I didn't see anything else but darkness.
8 years later, Kira Kaywood, a writer and editor for a magazine called Justice Denied, looked at Dunn's case and was troubled by the original witness statements.
Their testimonies didn't match, but by the time they got to court, everything matched. And so it was clear to me, reading it, that these young men seemed to have been coached.
Her article was published in 2000.
It felt like hope. It felt like hope for the first time.
And then in 2005, Dunn got a surprise in the mail, a signed and sworn affidavit from one of those teens, DeMaurice Stepp. Dunn was not the shooter, Stepp wrote. Stepp said that he had been facing serious charges of his own and got a deal in return for his testimony. I lied on Chris Dunn to save myself.
He admitted that he lied. And I felt like a kid in the candy store. I felt like it was Christmas all over again.
Kira Kaywood then hired an investigator to find the other witness, Michael Davis. And how difficult was it to find Michael Davis?
With that name, it's like John Smith, all right?
You could have just walked away. Why didn't you?
Well, I was there because I believed in his innocence, and I couldn't, in good conscience, turn my back on someone in that situation.
And Kaywood's interest in the case by then, she says, had become very personal.
We got married right here in this visiting room. Held hands in the presence of my mother and my sister, Dolores.
And this is a man who could spend the rest of his life in prison, and you choose to marry him. You may never get a chance to live with him.
That's true.
It took nearly a decade to find the other witness, Michael Davis.
I didn't see no shots. No
Okay.
way. We ran.
Davis, then in jail in California, admitted to an investigator that he too lied at Dunn's trial.
Did we see Dunn do it? No.
Okay.
No, nobody seen Dunn do it.
You thought at that point, Chris is gonna come out.
Oh yeah, we were ecstatic.
But it never happened. In September 2020, after a post-conviction hearing, a judge ruled this court does not believe that any jury would now convict Dunn under these facts. But the judge also said that under Missouri law, he couldn't free Dunn because he's not on death row.
He thought that no juror would convict Chris, which means that's synonymous with innocence, right? And he sits in prison. It's like a gaping hole in Missouri jurisprudence.
Justin Bonus, a New York attorney, is now working with the Midwest Innocence Project to get Dunn out.
He sits in there. He won and he lost at the same time.
Under Missouri law, this is the only person who can at this point ask a court to vacate Dunn's conviction. The St. Louis Circuit Attorney, Gabriel Gore. Aren't you, in fact, Christopher Dunn's best hope, if not his last hope, for ever getting out of prison, as it stands right now?
I do. I agree with that. This country is kind of built on the premise that, better that a guilty man go free than that an innocent man be convicted. So, of course, that's something that concerns me.
Well, Aaron, right now, my life is in his hands. And all I'm asking you now is to give me a fresh shake.
Coming up, how smuggling at the border is leading to increasingly dangerous high-speed pursuits. This is Eye on America. Welcome back. Rampant cartel activity, including drug and human trafficking, is endangering motorists in one Arizona county. Chris Van Cleve rides along with law enforcement officials who are risking their lives on the road to catch the perpetrators.
A high-speed pursuit near the border in southeast Arizona. It's just another night for sheriff's deputies trying to contain a problem turning rural Cochise County into a raceway for cartel-led human smuggling.
It is 100% Uber for the cartels.
The day started with us on patrol with Deputy Chris Oletsky, a 20-year Marine veteran who joined the Sheriff's Department about 3 years ago.
Sir, how are you?
He's part of a 5-man team focused solely on intercepting human smugglers.
How often are you seeing high-speed pursuits?
I mean, to give you an idea, I think it was this Tuesday, there were 5, I think, in about 2 hours, maybe 3 hours.
5 pursuits in just a few hours in a single county, covering about 6,200 square miles, roughly the size of Connecticut and Rhode Island combined, with 83 miles of Mexican border and just 99 sworn deputies.
Approximately 70 miles.
Chases like this captured on officer body camera video. The driver crashed and made a run for it as his car caught on fire.
I can't see the release, hang on.
With a migrant in the trunk.
Get out, come on.
Deputies managed to get him out unhurt.
Smuggling and trafficking drugs, humans, it's every day. It's every day.
County Sheriff Mark Daniels.
And every time I hear a deputy or an officer or an agent said, we're in pursuit, we have a fare to yield, I cringe because right there, my citizens are placed in danger.
And that's a reality. In October 2021, a 16-year-old suspected smuggler crashed into a 65-year-old headed to her own birthday dinner. She died. Arizona passed a strict new felony human smuggling statute trying to address the problem. The sheriff says the vast majority of the more than 400 arrested since are American citizens who came from out of town, many recruited by drug cartels using social media. Messages like these intercepted by investigators promising would-be drivers thousands to race migrants away from the border.
We have over 100 juveniles in the last 18 months that we've apprehended in this county, smuggling, all the way to the age of 13 and 12 years of age. Down here, driving grandma's car, friend's car, or mom and dad's car, down here. And it's social media.
I have eyes on spike location.
We witnessed this firsthand when 18-year-old Gerardo Alarcon Martin from North Carolina
Turn around.
led deputies on a lengthy chase. He's since pleaded guilty to assisting a human smuggling operation, telling investigators he was directed to pick up 3 migrants in the desert after responding to a message on TikTok.
Was it an advertisement?
It was like an advertisement, yeah.
What was that advertisement like?
It was just showing money.
What is that doing to the quality of life in this county?
There's no respect for human life going on. Cartels don't care about America. They don't care about you and I or anybody else that they're exploiting. They care about the dollar bill and power.
It's a deal with the devil.
It's a deal with the devil.
Back with Deputy Oletsky, as night fell, the team pulled over this car for speeding as it entered the town of Tombstone. The 23-year-old driver was from 3 hours north in Phoenix. In the back, an undocumented migrant.
And I'm sorry that I did this, and I'm sorry I'm sitting here wasting you guys' time.
We're heading southbound.
Just minutes later, we were racing to intercept a suspected smuggler after the speeding vehicle refused to stop.
Border Patrol ended up in a pursuit. That vehicle fled from Border Patrol.
The goal is to stop the SUV before it gets into town. As the police pursuit approaches, Oletsky lays down a spike strip. It's now where what had become routine became anything but. And the life and death consequences this community faces became instantly real.
Hang on. We went down over the edge. You went over the edge. Stay where you are. Stay where you are. Just stay where you are.
We flagged down this passing Border Patrol agent who called for help.
This is dangerous work. After spike stripping that fleeing SUV, our deputy slipped and fell off the embankment here about 10 feet down onto concrete. He's going to have to be airlifted to a hospital in Tucson.
The driver, 47-year-old Bernadette Fagua of the Phoenix area, was arrested a couple of miles up the road. The spike strip took out 3 of her tires. At least 6 suspected migrants ran from the scene.
Why didn't you stop for the police?
She's charged with human smuggling and DUI and will likely face additional charges stemming from Oletsky's injuries.
One of your deputies was almost killed last night.
Yeah.
Did it make you angry?
It pisses me off because we've been talking about this for almost 3 years. I've testified in front of Congress. I've met with anybody that'll listen to us. And every day that goes by, I see another tragedy.
You've got these folks that are hell-bent on getting away. Would it be safer to not pursue?
We have revised our pursuit policy. We have revised our operational, our interdiction, you name it, we've done it. But when you have a car going 100 miles an hour and you turn your head and go the other way and they kill a family, how do you live with yourself? You can't.
Ahead, can increasing affordable housing access solve homelessness in Los Angeles? That story is next. We close our show with a look at efforts to curb the homelessness crisis in Los Angeles. The city experienced a 10% rise in people living on the streets in 2023, but officials have been taking action. I recently spoke with the Los Angeles mayor, Karen Bass, about how her administration has addressed the issue in her first year in office.
Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass ran and won largely on a single campaign promise:
we are going to solve homelessness,
to house about a third of our city's 46,000 homeless by year's end.
What I did on day one of my administration was put the city in a state of emergency.
That kicked off her housing relief program, Inside Safe. The city reported the initiative brought nearly 2,000 people off the street. That, combined with other homeless relief programs, got nearly 22,000 Angelenos into temporary housing. That's 5,000 more than last year, with an eye towards major upcoming events in the city.
I am hoping that all of the energy around the World Cup and the Olympics will bring the city together in a way that says we can't have the world come here and see 46,000 people sleeping on the street. We have dispelled the myth that people who are on the street will not leave the street. And so we have not had a problem of people accepting housing.
Getting people into temporary housing is one thing. Keeping them housed, another, and $67 million in. Only 3,500 of the unhoused have found permanent places to live. The problem? There just isn't enough affordable housing stock, making it nearly impossible to find placements for those running out of time in temporary units.
How do you increase the stock available?
Well, we have to build it. But my point is that I don't want people waiting on the streets in tents while we're building. That's why we're getting them off the street, providing motel rooms for them, while at the same time we are expediting building.
Mayor Bass issued an executive order allowing Inside Safe to use vacant residential hotel rooms, many of which are permanent housing for low-income residents, as interim housing, which some say solves one problem and creates another.
The idea of removing the already too few permanent units we have, I think is the wrong policy at this time.
Barbara J. Schultz is Director of Housing and Justice at Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles.
According to the city's own housing element, we need 456,000 more housing units to meet the need in the city of Los Angeles. And 185,000 of those are needed for low-income Angelenos.
There's also the challenge of matching funding sources to specific communities, like the one at Summit View Apartments, which serves only homeless veterans.
After I got out the Army, I was suffering from clinical depression.
When 26-year-old Gene Casimir left the Army, he moved to Los Angeles, but couldn't find work. Here, he was able to get the mental health and employment services to get back on his feet.
I say this is the best place I've ever found.
Where were you before?
Well, before I was living in a shelter for a year.
We want to be sure nothing triggers falling back into homelessness.
Stephanie Klasky Gamer is president and CEO of the nonprofit LA Family Housing, which developed Summit View.
In order to realize a vision of providing more supportive housing for people in need, there's a little bit of the city, the county, the state, federal government, and private investors to make this happen.
That complexity is part of the problem, especially in the midst of a post-COVID economy with high inflation where housing the poor isn't profitable.
Until we spend the money directly on housing, we're not going to have an impact on homelessness.
I don't believe that we have done all we should have done as a nation.
Secretary Marcia Fudge at the Department of Housing and Urban Development is trying to streamline that process.
The Biden administration has put a pretty lofty goal on the table to reduce homelessness by 25% by 2025. Is that too aggressive?
I think it's ambitious. I don't think it's impossible.
To aid the effort, Secretary Fudge raised the value of housing vouchers and released $50 million to support homeless youth.
We are doing all we know how to do because we understand that young people in particular, if they don't start to look at home ownership as an option, they may never be put in a situation to start to build the kind of generational wealth that our parents built.
But those measures may only fulfill their potential with more permanent housing.
We cut down the time it takes to build. So for example, what used to take months in terms of permits now takes 37 days. If you are coming to Los Angeles to build 100% affordable housing, you essentially break through a lot of the barriers and we expedite your building.
She's additionally sponsored 2 more bills in the state assembly to do that.
It will allow us to use a lot of city property. So we have city, state, county, federal property that is either vacant or is available for us to use. So we don't even have to be involved in purchasing property. It's to expedite the building on public lands.
Which is critical to organizations like LA Family Housing.
This site itself was formerly owned by the city of Los Angeles. They made surplus properties owned by the city of LA available to developers.
And also ensuring an equitable housing landscape.
If we just continue to only build in places where low-income housing has always been, we end up segregating poverty and segregating people in a way that is really contrary to the fair housing law.
People are legitimately frustrated in this city.
Voters were frustrated, angry, and demoralized because voters have voted on 3 occasions to raise their own taxes. And every time they voted to raise their taxes, the problem got worse because even though the city was building as fast as they could, the city was becoming more and more expensive. So it's critical that I take and my administration takes a comprehensive approach. Thank you.
The clock is ticking for the mayor who promised to curb a crisis not just faced by the City of Angels, but one that plagues the nation. For more stories like these and live coverage of breaking news 24/7, stream us right here on CBS News. I'm Michelle Miller. Thank you for watching Eye on America.